If you're serious about crypto, you'll want to hear this. The Democrats have been working behind the scenes to crush crypto companies' access to the banking system. You might have heard that Elizabeth Warren is the industry's biggest opponent, but some think we shouldn't worry because she doesn't have enough power. Well, that's not the whole story. In fact, Warren has already played a key role in shutting down major crypto-friendly banks like Silvergate. This isn't just a theory, it's all documented, and we're going to break it down for you. The Democrats' plan to debank crypto is very real, and there's proof they're not done yet. This video was inspired by an article by Nick Carter titled "Inside the Biden Admin's Plot to Destroy Silvergate and Debank Crypto for Good." To understand what's happening now, let's start with Silvergate, one of the most important banks for the crypto world. Silvergate wasn't just any bank. It was a major player that worked closely with crypto businesses, allowing them to operate 24/7 through its unique system, the Silvergate Exchange Network, SEN. This network enabled crypto firms to settle transactions instantly, rather than being restricted by traditional banking hours. At its peak, Silvergate held over $11 billion in crypto deposits, making up 82% of its total deposits. It was basically the backbone for many crypto companies. That's huge. But despite being in a strong financial position, Silvergate was forced to close its operations in March 2023, and Elizabeth Warren was the main driving force behind it. But let's rewind for a second. You probably remember the collapse of FTX in November 2022, right? FTX was one of the biggest crypto exchanges, and its collapse in late 2022 caused chaos throughout the industry. Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of FTX, was at the center of this massive fraud. As more details came out, everyone started pointing fingers at anyone associated with FTX, including Silvergate Bank. Silvergate had provided banking services to FTX and its affiliated company, Alameda Research, so naturally it got pulled into the scandal. Many assumed that Silvergate had been complicit in FTX's shady dealings, but the truth is far more complex. Now here's where Elizabeth Warren comes in. She wrote two very public angry letters to Silvergate's CEO. The first letter was sent in December 2022, accusing the bank of criminal involvement with FTX. These accusations were serious. Warren claimed that Silvergate hadn't done enough to prevent FTX's fraudulent activities and suggested that the bank could be criminally liable. These accusations caught the attention of multiple federal regulators, the FDIC, the Federal Reserve, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC. This wasn't just a public shaming. These agencies launched intense investigations into Silvergate in early 2023. So what happened to Silvergate? In March 2023, Silvergate announced its decision to voluntarily liquidate. Yes, the bank decided to close its own operations, but this decision didn't come out of nowhere. Silvergate had been facing intense pressure from multiple sides. In fact, according to sources like Nick Carter, this decision to close was the direct result of regulatory pressure, not because Silvergate was insolvent. The bank wasn't failing financially. Rather, it was being squeezed by regulators who were increasingly hostile to any bank with strong ties to crypto. You see, Silvergate's relationship with FTX had already made it a target, but it was the broader crackdown on the crypto industry that ultimately led to its downfall. This brings us to Operation Chokepoint 2.0, a term coined by Nick Carter to describe what's happening right now. For context, the original Operation Chokepoint was a program started under the Obama administration in 2013 to cut off banking services to industries the government didn't like, such as firearms and gambling. Operation Chokepoint 2.0 is a similar effort, but this time it's being used to target the crypto industry. One of the main tactics being used is what we saw with Silvergate, a secret 15% cap on crypto-related deposits. This cap wasn't even written down anywhere. It was imposed verbally around late 2022, which is highly irregular and suspicious. Silvergate was told they couldn't have more than 15% of their deposits tied to crypto businesses, and as crypto prices rose, the bank unintentionally exceeded this limit in early 2023. This was a way to strangle crypto-friendly banks without leaving any official documentation. And when regulators give these kinds of orders, banks have no choice but to comply, because regulators have the power to shut down a bank for almost anything. As if that wasn't enough, Silvergate also faced enormous pressure from short sellers, people betting that the bank's stock would go down. One of these short sellers, Mark Cohodes, accused Silvergate publicly in early 2023 of being a traded crime scene, making extreme and unfounded claims that the bank was involved with terrorists, drug dealers, and human traffickers. Cohodes even reached out directly to Elizabeth Warren's office, providing her with a slide deck that he said detailed Silvergate's wrongdoings. Warren took the bait and wrote another letter, pressuring the Federal Home Loan Bank, FHLB, in February 2023 to cut off Silvergate's access to liquidity. The FHLB was Silvergate's last chance to stay afloat, and when they pulled their support, it was the final nail in the coffin. But here's the crucial part. Silvergate was still solvent. It had more than enough assets to cover its liabilities. In fact, when Silvergate decided to liquidate in March 2023, the bank ensured that all depositors were made whole and no one lost money. This wasn't a case of a bank collapsing due to mismanagement. Silvergate was forced into liquidation because it could no longer operate under the crushing pressure from regulators who didn't want it working with crypto firms anymore. At this point, the collapse of Silvergate was inevitable. But was the bank truly at fault? Not according to many insiders. In fact, many believe that Silvergate was a victim of FTX's fraud, not an accomplice. The collapse of Silvergate wasn't due to financial mismanagement. It was a result of intense regulatory pressure. Regulators essentially forced the bank to shut down, using Operation Chokepoint 2.0 tactics to cut off its ability to serve crypto companies. And this wasn't an isolated incident. Right after Silvergate's collapse, two other major crypto-friendly banks went down, Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank. We even made a video in March last year explaining how regulators were targeting banks that provided services to crypto companies.
The FDIC will be selling our bank. I think somebody's getting a very good deal because they're going to get to buy a bank that is in really pretty good shape. We were aware of the interest rate risk and all the other factors. I think part of the problem was, from the regulator standpoint, our bank had gotten involved in digital. Now, we did it in a very sound way. What we were not ourselves heavily invested in digital as our part of our base, but we allowed and facilitated our customers if they wanted to deal with each other in digital. But I think one of the things that's come out of this is the regulators sending a clear signal to stay away from digital.
Signature Bank's board members publicly protested, saying the bank was solvent and that the move to shut it down was politically motivated. But the government pressed on, and Signature was forced into receivership on March 12, 2023. This is no coincidence. These banks were targeted because they were friendly to crypto, and the US government is making it clear that it doesn't want crypto companies to have access to banking. Now, let's talk about the broader implications of these actions. All of this ties back to the government's push for its own payment system, known as FedNow. FedNow is a 24/7 payment system launched by the Federal Reserve in July 2023, and it's designed to compete with crypto-friendly systems like Silvergate's SEN and Signature's Signet. By taking out key competitors in the banking sector, the government is clearing the path for FedNow to become the dominant player in the financial system. This isn't just about regulation, it's about control. And who else is behind these efforts? Well, Parat Ramamurthy, Kamala Harris's economic advisor and a former policy director for Elizabeth Warren during her 2020 presidential campaign, has been heavily involved in shaping these anti-crypto policies. His role in all of this cannot be overlooked. Many believe that Elizabeth Warren is using Ramamurthy as a proxy to push her anti-crypto agenda within the Biden administration. If Kamala Harris wins the next election, Ramamurthy's influence will likely grow, and the crypto industry will face even more challenges. It's highly likely that Elizabeth Warren placed Parat Ramamurthy in Kamala Harris's camp to influence future policies indirectly, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. We can expect this war on crypto to escalate even further, with Ramamurthy driving these efforts. What's worse is that much of this was done in secret. Certain details were labeled Confidential Supervisory Information CSI, meaning they were hidden from public view. This allowed regulators to act without leaving a paper trail, effectively killing off crypto-friendly banks without having to explain their actions. The result? The 2023 banking crisis was the worst since 2008, and insiders like Nick Carter believe it was largely driven by the government's attempt to control the financial system and suffocate the crypto industry. So, what does all this mean for the future of crypto? If the Democrats, led by people like Elizabeth Warren and Parat Ramamurthy, continue to hold power, we can expect more of these aggressive moves against crypto. The Biden administration has already shown its willingness to use regulatory pressure to shut down crypto-friendly banks, and if Kamala Harris takes office, we're likely to see this strategy ramp up even further. I suggest you to take a look to Nick Carter's article. It is definitely worth it. To wrap things up, if you care about crypto, you need to be aware of what's happening behind the scenes. The war on crypto is real and it's being fought in the banking sector. So as always, stay curious and stay hodling, because this fight is far from over.